Dual agency is a critical topic on the national portion of the real estate exam because it fundamentally alters the traditional fiduciary relationship between an agent and their client. Dual agency occurs when a single broker or a single real estate firm represents both the buyer and the seller in the same transaction. This creates an immediate and inherent conflict of interest because a broker cannot fulfill the duty of undivided loyalty to two parties with opposing goals. On the exam, you will see this tested through scenarios where one salesperson in a firm represents a seller and another salesperson in that same firm represents a potential buyer. Many students incorrectly assume this is not dual agency because there are two different agents involved, but the exam focuses on the fact that all agency agreements are legally held by the employing broker. Therefore, if both agents work for the same broker, it is a dual agency situation at the brokerage level, regardless of how many individual salespeople are involved. To make this relationship legal, the broker must obtain written, informed consent from both the buyer and the seller. If you see an exam question where an agent represents both parties but only has verbal permission or only has permission from one side, that is a trick, and the answer is that the agent has committed an illegal act. A major trap on the exam involves the limitation of disclosure and loyalty. In a dual agency relationship, the agent is strictly prohibited from sharing certain pieces of confidential information that could give one party a negotiating advantage over the other. For example, you cannot tell the buyer that the seller is willing to accept $30,000 less than the listing price. Similarly, you cannot tell the seller that the buyer is willing to pay more than their initial offer. These are secrets that must be kept unless you have specific written authorization from the party to disclose them. You also cannot share the personal motivations of either party, such as a pending divorce or a job transfer that is forcing a quick sale. This limited representation means you are no longer an advocate, but rather a neutral mediator. You must also be wary of implied dual agency, which happens through your conduct. If you are the listing agent and you start giving a buyer advice on how much to offer or what terms to include in the contract, you have likely created an agency relationship through your actions. This is a common exam scenario where the agent accidentally becomes a dual agent by acting as if they represent the buyer without a written agreement. To help you remember the requirements for a legal dual agency, use the mnemonic dual, which stands for disclosure, understanding, agreement, and limited representation. You must disclose the conflict of interest to both parties and ensure they have a full understanding of what they are giving up in terms of fiduciary duties. Then, you must secure their written agreement and proceed with the knowledge that your representation is strictly limited. The exam often asks about the best way to handle these conflicts, and while some states allow designated agency, where a broker assigns separate agents to each party, many national questions will simply focus on basic dual agency requirements. Always look for the word written when it comes to consent, because verbal agreements are never sufficient in this context. Focus on the fact that while you must still be honest and fair to both parties, you can no longer provide the same level of strategic advice that you would in a single agency relationship. You must still provide accounting and use reasonable care and skill, but the duties of loyalty and full disclosure are significantly compromised. If a question asks which fiduciary duty is most difficult to maintain in dual agency, the answer is undivided loyalty. Understanding this distinction is the key to passing the agency section of the national exam.